Hey there. Trying to figure out where we are. Alice is saying that group 10, yeah. Um, I was saying, Alice is saying that group 10 moderator can't get on. The last link we just sent had some problem with it. Not Sarah's, but the last one Kelly sent. I want to make sure that that's viable. And then there's some other participants who are having trouble getting on, and I just wanted to coordinate. Yes, moderator can't get on for the one that was sent 10 minutes ago, but I'll ask for the moderator name. Okay, I'll oh, because you don't know what the moderator looks like, basically. Yeah. Um. Okay. I'm asking Alice by instant message about which one is group 10. How many people are on? Okay. So on the ones that are missing, do we know how many? Okay, I'm just trying to triage. I mean, we can merge some groups, but I also want to get as many of the people who are not online that are just having trouble getting in invited through whatever means can get them on. What can we do here? Okay, let me call her. One sec, I'll patch her in. Hey, Alice, I've got John Kelly on the line. He's got a couple of challenges that he says he needs information from you on, and I'm trying to just close the loop. Hi there. We got you back. Do you want? Oh. Well, John, if a machine goes down and it's having a lot of trouble, if we need to merge one group out, should we make it on the machine that goes down, merge that group out to the others? If you go in a computer that is not already recording an in and go to Safari, you can reload and check if it's live. You can load two Hangouts at the same time if one is in Safari and one is in Chrome. Or I can load it. If you send me the link, I can check if it's live. Yeah, that'll. I could. Yes, I'll test. The Hangouts probably did not go down. If the Hangouts got started and at least one person was in them, they should still be up. But I can test them. Okay. Yes. Hi there. Yes, I've got Alice and I still on. Okay. Can we? Um, okay. So, John, can you just? I'm happy to check the other one, but can you give me a status of how many groups are full of people, and how many groups are not? Okay. So the Jeremy's is at 5 then? Great. Okay. Alice, do you want to text Julie? So my recommendation is that the groups that are 4 or 5, we keep trying to fill in by emailing the people who haven't shown up yet, and the groups that are 1 and 2, we merge into one group, and then we try to fill in any stragglers into one group that is going to add in, so that we can email everybody else who hasn't yet joined that they can join if they haven't yet gotten in. Sarah? Hey, how many do you have in your group? It's what? Okay, let me tell Alice that. Okay, Alice, I just wanted to mention Sarah has her Hangout live, but there's just a moderator there. But the moderator is staying on because the participants were sent a link to a different group. Alice, can we assist you in emailing any of these people or contacting any of these people? Sarah, can you get that? Sarah? All right, I'll take it. Hi there. I just received a call from you. Are you one of the participants in the deliberative process today? Got it. Let me merge you in. I just merged a moderator in because she's on and she says there's just one participant in our group in her group. I want to know, is that a group that was getting merged, or do we just need to email out that group to make sure they have the right link? I just patched the moderator in. What's your name, moderator? Oh, sorry, she just called me, so I was trying to connect it. Thank you. Okay, I'll invite him to the other email if you forward it. Got it. I, if the Reframit email is getting blocked through spam filters, I can send from my personal or Reframit account any email you want if that's what's getting in the way. Yes. Yes, I'm still there. I was on mute. Sorry. My recommendation is if we can delay the plenary by 5 or 10 minutes, but I think we can also um, run long. So I'd say we don't want to delay too much or we might lose an expert. So if we delay 5 or 10 minutes and then catch up on the other end, have the whole day run 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late. Okay, let's see what we have in the rest of the groups. And but yes, I'm happy to delay the start of the plenary 5, 10, 15 minutes. I don't think we should delay more than that, or we might lose someone. You said 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to tell the experts I emailed that the plenary is going to start 15 minutes late, and if it ends up, and if we get more people showing up, then we can then it can end late. But if not, no worries. Okay, I'm not going to tell them we're guaranteed to end on time. If we end on time, that's great. If we end up being a little late, it's fine.
Hi, this is Ron here. I'm just testing out to see if this works. Are you able to hear me?
Draft started here.
I think मेरा full face नहीं आ रहा
I
है.
also like to access microphone. Okay. Now, calling Shweta. Let me see how you look. Call timed out, but we'll show you the next video.
I might have to get a lower chair or what? Shouldn't happen. Or just boost up this chair.
You are not connected, is it?
No, I'm connected.
Okay, then I'm going to do a hangout from now.
1 minute. Just 1 second. Push this. Hold the towel. It's fine. Putting on a throne exercise.
Should I get the chair from the office room?
No. Just
Looks
say-
like no one could make it. Okay, so that means you didn't answer. But I want now.
Okay, come. Can't see anyone calling me.
It's saying calling Shweta here.
So यहाँ पे what do I have to do? Can you see if I'm not missing anything?
Okay, now let me come down.
No, you are. Somebody is calling you, no? Somebody picked you up.
Hello? No.
We can't see you. So,
Wait, hold on. Why can't you answer your call?
and
Maybe I'm already on a hangout which is not yet started. Does that matter?
then I don't want to appear.
No, I mean the person. It's not live yet.
Missed call from you. Missed call from you. Give me a call. Give me a call. Come on.
Alright, and then for Jackie Hughes' computer, did they get another person? We found someone else there too.
There's 7. Greg, who wasn't here last, went into Jeremy's. That's why that was bumped up.
Wait, so summarizing, that's 4 groups that are full? That's
I'm sorry, say that again, John?
Hanging out by themselves alone on the screen are Sally.
Let's keep that the open and Melody is open. What would you like to do with people that have not said anything?
so. Yeah, I think that what we should do is take half of the people who have not joined one of the existing groups and email them and invite them to Sally's group, and half of them to Melody's, assuming both are recording, and then see what we get in the
So
next
now,
bit.
okay, now listen.
We merge them.
How do I add make a call? You can recommend.
Okay, fair enough.
How do I? Okay, invite people. Let me call you. I don't know
I can
how
help.
to
Sarah
start
can
a
help. John
conversation.
can help.
Wait.
We're all on the line.
very scared. I'm very scared. You don't take it lightly, but it can be very cruel. So, no, it can be quite.
I didn't know nobody was there. Maybe Bobby was not online.
The point is not that if it got recorded or something.
It's not getting recorded right now. I'm telling you, it's not getting recorded. I'm not.
So give a call. Should I call you again?
Wait. Now suppose I end this.
Sarah, and you're returning the phone calls that you've gotten or emails. You followed up with all the ones who individually reached out. Great.
What's the most efficient way of doing this? An email to people. I don't want to bother the moderators to figure out who these groups. Figure
I can read off the names of everybody who.
Am I? Yeah. Yeah. So what if you can help John with what we're trying to do? Just let me explain where we are. Is so we've got I think that we've got 3 or 4 groups that are full, and then we've got the other groups. We're trying to figure out who has not joined yet, and so the other groups that are not full, we're trying to figure out basically who is not in a group. Who did not successfully join into the Hangouts. So what we're doing on the other line, and I can merge you in if you can help John, because Alice is asking John questions about this basically. I'm assuming A, that in the 4 groups that are full, the recording software is working well. So that's the first task. And assuming that that is true, then the other task is that I can merge you with the call and you can hear the questions, because basically every 30 seconds Alice is asking a question about which of the 150 participants is not in the group, and we're trying to identify them so that we can email them and merge them into one of the groups that is empty. Does that make sense? Maishka? Maya? Yes, we're trying to figure out by process of elimination who's not there, and then emailing all the people who are not there and inviting them to attempt to rejoin one of the groups that is live and empty. I can patch you in, but the first question is, are the groups that are live all recording?
Hello. Is this on?
They're all recording. That's great. So then the next thing is, can you help John triage who's missing and not from what Alice is communicating so that we can accelerate that as much as possible? The goal is, as soon as possible, to be able to email the people who are not present with a link. So what's happening is, I'll merge you in the call. Yeah. Sorry, I'm back. Yes, I am back. So my understanding is we've got 4 groups that are full and recording, and we've got 4 groups that are
I couldn't figure out.
missing people. Is
But
that
I think
correct?
it's live because I can, and these systems are working. I can see everything on here.
It is live, but you should be able to chat with me, no? Okay, now I'm giving you a
And then
call.
do we have other groups that are partial?
What is the sound which is coming?
That sound is because the microphone and everything is on, and it's picking up
Okay.
sound from.
Can we email the people who are not in one of the 3 groups that are recording and send them to one of the moderators that send them to one of the groups that has a moderator?
You have to put all the household windows.
I, 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, that's the simplest thing. So why don't we email them with the 3 links to the 3 groups that have moderators, and say if you're not in a group, go to one of these 3, and then we'll see who shows up, and if we need to merge one of those 3, we can merge one of those 3. So let's email. Yeah. So let's have those two links, and catch as catch can. If one fills up, they'll use the second link.
Should I, for confirmation, should I email those people to Alice?
Yes, let's email those links to Alice, and let's inform those two moderators that we're going to be sending people their way, and let's email then all participants. Alice is sending, I think, because Alice has the emails, but John is sending Alice the link that she'll send to them. Is that correct?
Melody did it by herself. Talking, I don't know, guy call it whatever she's talking about.
Okay, I don't think that, I don't agree with the way to do it, but I'll do it anyway.
Well, Alice, do you have an alternative that can work at this point?
I'm just, it's 10:15 right now. If you, when you email it out and get people in, they're likely to just be joining the plenary session.
Yes, but if they're joining late, we could also allow the moderator to have the dialogue at the end of the day go late if they're willing to. And if not, then anybody who fails to join today for technical reasons, we can try to invite them if they feel like joining tomorrow. Some of them might. And I mean, in other words, if those two moderators are willing to go an hour late today, then we can have like two groups that are late groups.
Okay, it's your decision. So I will, so what you're asking me to do is I'm going to email everybody that was invited today and email them a new link saying that if they're not in a group, then please join this group.
Yeah, one of those two groups. Link to both of the two that have a moderator waiting, standing by, and say these are late groups. They will end an hour later than the rest because some folks got started late for technical reasons.
Okay, all right. Okay, John, just send me the links off the email.
We can't see a very small machine running. Hang up.
That's okay. So it's Sally's group and Melody's group. So Melody's one is one that's on your computer, and then Sally. I mean, I have their link successful. I do.
My confirmation is one of these roles.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we should definitely confirm. So once you have it ready for confirmation, let me know.
Sending the first email very
Hey there. Sorry that it's messy, but at least we've got 3 or 4 groups that are going, and maybe we'll get some more. I think it's coming more together than it was 30 minutes ago. Stressing, struggling, trying to not let anything get in the way, but I'm working on it. I'm grateful for all your help, and I'm sorry it's a mess, but hopefully we're on track closer to it. So I just wanted to say I love you.
Yeah, is there anything I can fix? Like, what are the problems? I'm not sure why. Did people want to show up or?
I think some of it is people not showing up, and some of it is people had technical difficulty showing up. I think that this email for the late one hopefully will work, but then I think we're going to have a wave of additional triage. I don't know if we have phone numbers um, for people who are not on, but I can. We're trying to contact or reach out to the people who still can't get on for whatever reason. Yeah, let's email them first, and then we'll see. Okay. Thank you so much. I love you. Okay. Do you want me to merge you into the conference so you can listen in case there's something that you? Okay, you can listen. Got it. Sounds good. Okay. I love you lots. I'm back. So we're emailing the rest, and we've got a couple of the plenary people that said they worked. It's all good for them, so that's good. It's probably simpler and faster for you to get the email out if you send one link to all of them and have the two groups and just say these groups will run late. Unless there's a reason you think it's better to do the other way, I think that's probably the fastest. I guess what I was thinking was that as long as they're listening to the first plenary, the last small group discussion could go more than 30 minutes at the end of it. I was suggesting 1 hour late so that the last discussion's a full 90 minutes instead of 30 minutes for people who join late. Correct. And can you say something like, ignore this if you're already in a small group having your discussion?
Hello?
Great. Terrific. And then you have both links, right? And then you have the 2 links to the 2 groups that are open, right? Great. Let's send that, and let's tell the 2 moderators that people are on the way.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's running. It's live. I'm watching YouTube right now. We've got 2 of the plenary experts on. You'll be able to join there whenever you're ready. You're going to be moderating the session, but it'll be starting 15 minutes late. I can help them test microphones in 5 minutes if that will help them. So that's all good. You also might want to resend the contact number of if you're having any problems logging on. You can call, and then Sarah can answer. Oh, but if you already sent that, that's fine. Okay, they have it. So. Well, yeah, I mean, ideally, we have the Excel file with everybody's contact details so that we can work directly off of that, especially as you'll be remote tomorrow. Well, I think we can proceed if we have the two backfill groups. We can that are empty that we're filling up. We can relieve them, but we might want to wait 5 minutes just to see if those 2 fill up. We might want to have a third. Well, let me just ask John. The 2 groups that we just emailed people to join. How many people are in there? Okay, yeah. I mean, Alice, we could probably relieve them. We might need some more. We might need an additional 1 or 2 for tomorrow. So, maybe we can contact them later if we need extra for tomorrow. If people respond that way to your email. all those sessions have 0 people in there. Is that right, John?
The other session has people in it. There's three full sessions.
And there's no other partial sessions.
There are no other parts.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can relieve moderators for the so we have 2 backup sessions and we have the 3 full sessions, so we have up to 5 sessions today, and we're not getting enough other response to think that we're going to get more. So yeah, I mean, do you think that's the right idea? Is basically relieve them and ask, and we might need them as backups for tomorrow and relieve them. Is that are we that far behind on the numbers that makes sense at this point? I'm willing to go there if y'all are. Okay. Let's relieve 3 of them, and then let's give it another 15-20 minutes to see if we get more from the email in case we get overflowed. So let's relieve the other 2 in 30 minutes, but we can relieve 3 of them now. Hi there. Sorry, I'm just hearing this. I wanted to make sure y'all are able to test this system. So I was wondering, do you want to see if you can hear me, or if I can hear you?
Yeah, hi. This is Shweta.
Hello there. I can hear you well.
Great. I can hear you too.
Terrific.
This is Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. I can hear you well as well.
Oh, good. Okay. I don't have headphones, so I'm just using a mic on my computer, but it sounds like it's working okay.
It's working great. So just hang tight. We'll be officially starting in 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
Hi. I think I'm on. I'm not on Mozilla. I'm not on Chrome. Is that going to be a problem? Browser. Okay, let me just kind of.
Hi, everyone. This is Alice.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for jumping in on here a little early on to get situated. We're almost there. We're waiting for the questions to come in. It would just be, I think, a few more minutes.
Great.
Great.
Your hand to help you get the questions, or are you good?
All right, we're just a couple minutes away. I just confirmed one of our groups have streamed live into the plenary, so we're just waiting for 2 more groups to do the same thing. Okay, we're going to get started. I'm sorry for the slight delay. All the groups are either in or just about to click in. So we are going to get this plenary session started. I want to thank all of the experts here on this plenary session for taking time out of their Saturday to be with us today. We are so very grateful for this. I want to take a little moment just to introduce our panelists very briefly. We have with us, in no particular order, we have Pete Peterson, who is the Executive Director of the Davenport Institute at Pepperdine and specializes in public engagement. He previously served as the first executive director for Common Sense California, which promotes citizen engagement as a means of producing innovative policy decisions and better citizens. Building on his interest in citizen-government relationships, he's consulted on participatory planning and budgeting projects in cities across California. And we have Andrew Weiner, who is a senior immigration policy analyst for Bread of the World Institute. He has served as a researcher and analyst in immigrant communities and has contributed to Congressional Research Service reports, the Wall Street Journal, LA Times, National Journal, the list goes on, as well as academic journals such as Migration and Development in Practice. And we also have Ron Hira, who is assistant professor of public policy at Rochester Institute of Technology and a research associate at the Economic Policy Institute. He is the author of the book Outsourcing America, and his research interests include skilled labor markets, immigration, offshoring, globalization, and as a licensed engineer, he also serves as vice president for career activities for the IEE USA. And we have Sweta Khandelwal, and her bio, sorry, give me 1 second, she is the principal attorney at the law office of Sweta Khandelwal, a firm specializing in U.S. immigration and nationality law. She's been recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 immigration lawyers in California by the American Society of Legal Advocates and is the chair of the Silicon Valley chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. As well, to Ms. Khandelwal's professional experience in the field of immigration law, her personal experiences as an immigrant to the U.S. provided her with extensive knowledge of the challenges faced by employment-based immigrant law. So we are going to get started. The first question comes from Group 3. And just before we get started, I'll be asking the questions on behalf of each of the groups because this live plenary is not interactive in the sense that you can, the participants can ask the questions. So I'll be asking the questions on their behalf just because of technology, and the moderators of the small groups have emailed me the 2 questions from each of the groups, and I'll be reading it verbatim from the email that was sent, and I will let each of you respond to the question for about, I would say, 3 to 4 minutes for each answer. So the first question comes from Group 3, and the question is, should there be a different program for a lower skilled visa versus the H-1B process? Who would like to take that question first? Yes, please, go ahead, Sweta.
Okay, so the first thing is that there are lower skilled visas. There are visas now. H-1B, as we all know, is a specialty occupation visa. So the minimum requirement for an H-1B is that the person has to have the equivalency to a U.S. bachelor's degree. Any position that does not require a U.S. bachelor's minimum entry will not qualify for an H-1B visa. Now you have other visas. You have the H-2A visas. You have H-2B visas. So there are H-2A, for instance, is short-term visas for agricultural workers. H-2B are short-term visas for positions other than agriculture. So just a short answer to that question is that yes, there are already visas for less skilled positions. Now whether those visas really meet the needs of the industry or not is another question. But well, yes, we do have visas already in place. So if you're looking at a specific industry or sector, then I can better respond as to which visa is a better match for which industry.
Thank you, Sweta. next panelist.
I can answer. That's
Yes, please go ahead.
So I've worked somewhat with in terms of low skill workers. I have done some specific work on the agricultural industry, working with farm operators and farm worker representatives. So I can say definitely in the farm worker industry, and I think this is acknowledged by all groups, that a large majority of farm workers, for example, are unauthorized immigrants, and that's because some of the programs that were just mentioned, H-2A in particular, don't have pretty low caps. I think it's in the tens of thousands who can come in through agriculture, but there's hundreds of thousands of farm workers. So many farmers are sort of forced to hire undocumented, unauthorized immigrants because, according to them at least, there's not enough. There's not enough of low-skill workers who can come through legal means. So having in that sense, having a low-skill immigrant visa program, at least in terms of the agricultural industry, makes, from what I've seen in my research analysis, makes sense.
Thank you, Andrew. Ron, please go ahead.
So I'd just like to, I'm not an expert in those areas, but what I would like to say is I think we should make a distinction between guest worker visas and immigration, permanent immigration. And so what's been discussed so far is really just guest worker visas. Should we have migrant workers who don't have the same rights as you and I, assuming that you and I are citizens? So that's just an important part of the distinctions that need to be made, the nuances that are part of the immigration discussion and debate. And so I think a larger question is, to what extent do we have immigration for lower skilled workers that's not based just on family?
Right. Pete, did you? Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
I guess I would just piggyback a little bit on what Andrew had said about the seeming lack of communication, especially in the agriculture industry. Obviously, I'm based here in California, and I know the gap between the visas that are allocated and the needs of farms throughout the state is significant. So trying to find ways to build the bridges of communication really between, in this case, the agricultural industry and the allocation of visas. There just needs to be better communication there.
All right. Any panelists like to follow up? All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Next question we have from the same group. What is the goal of the immigration policy? Are our immigration goals different now than they were years ago? Should they be? Do we have an understanding of what our demographics will be in the next 50 years regarding policies? Who would like to go first?
Maybe I'll just quickly start. I mean,
I
think especially as we're looking at some of these issues related to technology, the demands on the workforce have really changed considerably over the last 50 years, and in part because of the rise of technology in the economy. So finding qualified people to fulfill generally highly technical positions, ones that generally demand a significant STEM education. Here in California, especially in Silicon Valley, it's become basically a trope that many of these positions go unfulfilled. As far as the demographic question, you know, there has been quite a bit of talk, and especially here in California, we're due to become what was once known as a majority state here. So at least demographic trends seem to point to becoming a predominantly Hispanic, Latino state in the next 15 to 20 years. How much of that is actually influenced directly by immigration is another question. I mean, some of the numbers that we're talking about on the immigration side for visas are in the tens of thousands, and obviously California is a state of 35, 38 million people.
Yes, Ron, go ahead.
So I'd say a couple of things. One, to take the sort of larger picture, our immigration policy in the U.S. has generally favored family-based immigration over economic immigration, over employment-based immigration. And I think that's a debate and discussion whether we need to rebalance that in some way. That's a debate and discussion that we should be having, which I don't think has really been vetted in the public, either this round in 2013 when the Senate debated the bill S-744 or back in 2007. So just to give you a sense, about 65% of our permanent immigration, that is green cards, go for family reunification, family-based immigration. About 15% or so goes to economic or employment-based immigration. So it's a much smaller share, another 15% to humanitarian refugee asylees, and 5% or so to diversity visa. So I think that's a larger question that we should be having. I think the way that the debate and discussion has been framed by the interest groups, particularly by the business interest groups, is that we need more workers. And I'd be cautious about that. So they've basically made the economic argument. And it's actually kind of surprising they've been able to make this economic argument given the large amount of unemployed and underemployed folks, and the same companies that are complaining about unfilled jobs are laying off by the tens of thousands simultaneously. So I'd be a little bit skeptical about the needs and wants of the industry without some kind of, as President Reagan put it, trust but verify. So I think we need to have that in place before we take that at face value. So, what do we do? Do we move towards more of an economic based immigration as the UK, Australia, and many other countries have done? I think that's something we should discuss. I think a lot of economists would like that. I'm not sure that that matches the values of the American public, but we should have that discussion more openly.
Thank you, Ron. Andrew, you're nodding your head. Would you like to jump in here?
Sure. I mean, one thing I maybe I thought interesting was the question. It's a very extremely broad question, but also important. Sort of the goals of immigration policy. I mean, that kind of goes to the heart of the whole debate over what's comprehensive immigration reform and whatnot. But I think there are many goals to immigration policy. It's not one or the other. There's I think Ron talked about part of immigration. The goal of immigration policy is to help the country economically, and to help companies and employers and the overall economy get the labor force that they need. So that's one. Another one, which was also mentioned, which is big, is helping immigrants in a way, family reunification. So immigrants who are already here can bring in, a lot of the immigration has been based on family reunification. So that's been another goal, another important goal. But then there's also another very different one, which is refugees and asylees. So that's more sort of like a humanitarian goal of immigration policy, where we take in people from different parts of the world who are suffering political persecution, or based on their religion or ethnic background. And then there's also geopolitical reasons, right? So there's a reason why our immigration policy versus Cuba and Vietnam, as opposed to like Haiti or Mexico. So immigration policy is also tied to things going on in the world internationally. So I'm not putting any value on any of those goals, but I think they're just to say that the goals of immigration policy, there's a lot going on, a lot of interplay between different priorities, and I think a lot of the debate on reforming immigration is how people value all these different goals versus other objectives.
Yeah, I think the question in some ways summarizes the problem itself. That's why it's sort of hard to agree to one unified goal which will lead to comprehensive immigration reform. You have different parties, you have different ideologies, you have different lobby groups, and to get them together, each has its own, and within their individual arguments, each agenda, each goal is equally important, but just to one at the expense of the other does more harm rather than good. So it's sort of, I think it's interesting that the way the question is framed, it's almost summarizing the problem itself.
I just want to just further probe on the issue. I know it's a tough question about the demographics part. Pete and Ron touched on this a little bit. Sweta and Andrew, do you have any thoughts on the demographics aspect? She was the question or the group was wondering, do we have an understanding of what our demographics will be like in 50 years? How is this normally done?
Well, again, that's, now you have to sort of examine the implications of the policies or at each regional local level. Now, as we said, if you're talking about H-1B workers, most people seem to be thinking that it's only California or it's only Silicon Valley that's kind of benefiting from this. But that's actually not true. I mean, there is data to the country that indicates that almost about 200 metropolitan areas have across the US have actually experienced an increase in the demand for H-1B workers. So demographics kind of constantly keep changing, and it's pretty important to frame your policies in accordance with changing demographics. But again, that's part of the problem.
Thank you. Oh, Ron, please go ahead.
So I want to again reiterate that there's a very big difference between a guest worker program like an H-1B and permanent immigration. So what I was talking to was really about permanent immigration. The H-1B is partly immigration policy because it's dual intent visa, but most of the large users of H-1B, the employers of H-1Bs, do never sponsor them for a green card and never intend to sponsor them. So we should really be careful about this debate and discussion. And thinking about policy, because guest worker policy is really a labor market policy, and it's also about education policy. It's not immigration policy, and so folks from industry have really conflated the guest worker discussion with permanent immigration. I think purposely to try to kind of confuse people, and so I think we want to just separate that out and talk about, if you're going to talk about immigration, let's say the H-1Bs who are going to be permanently sponsored, what are some of the issues with per country caps, and then also in the STEM fields we know that the high-tech companies have a very low proportion of underrepresented minorities, lower than the demographics would expect in terms of education. And so is the solution to bring in guest workers, or is the solution to hold these companies a little bit more accountable, both in terms of their gender and underrepresented minority hiring?
Thank you, Ron. Any other comments before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I would just jump in on the demographic piece as well. I mean, I think what the census data has shown is that the geographic dispersal of immigrants, whether on visas or in process of becoming citizens, is not equal as well. I'm pretty sure the numbers are that 1 in 4 Californians are foreign-born, and the vast majority of immigrants to the country live in 4 or 5 states, basically California, Florida, Texas, New York. So I think the geographic piece as well, that there are a lot of people that may not be experiencing some of the effects of immigration, but there are states, for example, like California, which have seen significant impact from immigration.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next question here. Next question is from Group 10, and the first one is, have there been any discussions regarding establishing buffer zones, halfway house-esque communities to help calibrate immigrants to American culture as they're moving to the U.S.? I'm going to repeat that just in case. Have there been any discussions regarding establishing buffer zones, halfway house-esque communities to help calibrate immigrants to American culture as they're moving to the U.S.? First thoughts on this question. Seems like Group 10 has stumped our panelists here.
Well, I don't know of any such buffer zones.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would be done. I mean, it has echoes of some of the internment camps that we had during World War II. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, obviously, we have the situation on the border now with this explosion of immigration of children coming over the border. But yeah, to be in a sort of halfway house process where there may be classes being offered, or I have not seen that as an example.
Anyone else? Andrew, Ron?
Well, I mean, I haven't heard any discussion about that like other people, which, maybe it's good there hasn't been a lot of discussion about that. But I think, I think it happened, something like that sort of happens naturally in some ways, in that, you have ethnic enclaves, and then you have certain people from certain countries who, when they migrate here, many times stay in communities where, or even, the same town. If you're talking about Mexico, people from the same town or village in Mexico or Central America, they send word back home, and then they come to the States, and they, when you come to a place where you don't know the culture, the language, or especially if you're undocumented, you want to be around people who you know and trust. So I think, you do have these ethnic enclaves, and from there, maybe people can become more assimilated, or more sort of understand, more acclimated to the, to U.S. To the United States. But, to the how fast that happens, or if it happens at all, is a question. But I do think those enclaves serve as sort of, in a way, I think the question was like a buffer between the immigrant's home country and sort of life in, mainstream U.S. culture, society.
I would just add too, though, I think the question actually does hit at a very important subject, which is what was at one point called Americanization, right? What are the demands of citizenship, and how are they communicated to immigrants? I think it's very fair to say that the United States demands a whole lot more of its citizens than many other countries. And as it relates specifically to the area of civic engagement, most of the studies show that there is a gap in civic participation, even amongst first-generation citizens, moving on to second and third generation. You generally see an increase in civic participation over generations. As was mentioned before, I think we also need to maintain that there's a difference between some of these immigrants coming over in visa status versus those that are in the process of becoming citizens. But I think it is very fair to say that we need to be concerned about how we are communicating the demands of citizenship and civic engagement to those who are coming from countries where, quite frankly, their experience has been not only to not be engaged, but to, in many cases where folks are coming from more authoritarian regimes, to basically stay out of the way. That obviously is not what the demands are in the United States, and I think there are various parts of civil society and within those ethnic enclaves that are communicating those messages. But I do think we need to be very mindful about how we are communicating the demands of citizenship.
Any further thoughts? All right, we're going to move on to the next question. From the same group, let's hope it's a little easier. Should we assign a priority to giving out labor to citizens over importing foreign labor over? And why are big companies all pro bringing H-1B visas over? I think there maybe have been missing a word or so, but let me just reread the question for you. Should we assign a priority to giving out labor to citizens over importing foreign labor over? And why are big companies all pro bringing H-1B visas over?
Okay. I'll take a
Yes.
stab at this question. So I think the first thing is that we need to understand this from a broader context of economics and policy. So the question to my mind is not whether a job has to be given to a US citizen versus a foreign national. The question to my mind is overall does immigration overall contribute to a substantial increase in job creation in the economy? So the first thing is that we need to look at the and there are multiple issues and questions in this particular question. So I would like to use what I say is a cascading effect or is on job creation. So every job that is created within the high-tech field. Now I'm here assuming that okay, there is a shortfall of STEM workers, US workers. There is genuine need to import foreign nationals. Every increase in a job, which is even though the job may be given to a foreign national, is accompanied by a corresponding increase in the jobs in the service sector. So just to kind of argue and say that whether a particular job has to be given to a US citizen versus a foreign national, to my mind, is not looking at the complete picture in the first place. So that is the first thing. Second is the question of whether of larger companies hiring H-1B workers. Now, again, there is enough data. There is studies done by the Brookings Institution, by other agencies that kind of go on to show that H-1B programs actually drive wages up in the sectors where H-1B workers are hired. They do positions that are predominantly dominated by H-1B workers. These positions have been associated with significant increase in wages compared to both STEM and non-STEM college-educated natives. The wage growth in these industries, which are dominated by H-1B workers, is much higher than the national average. So again, if you look, as I said, if you look at the totality of the data, it's not one versus the other. It's essentially what in the broader context is good for the US economy.
Thank you, Sweta. I saw lots of smile. I mean, Ron, you seem like you're bursting from your seat.
Yeah, well, where to begin? I think what she was trying to say is that, yeah, that H-1Bs could and should be hired basically at the employer's choice, and employers can and will lay off American workers if they could hire H-1Bs at lower wages, which they can, and they do. So I think that's basically what her argument is, and that we should all be happy about that because somehow magically that's going to create more jobs for those people who got laid off and for the broader economy. I think we have to be really careful about understanding how the H-1B program works at the micro level. So the way it works is that the Congress sets the wage floor for H-1B workers. It's based on the occupation and the location. And there's something called skill level, which is supposed to correspond to experience level. But there's so many loopholes in the way that this is all defined that, in fact, it works to the advantage of the employer to hire an H-1B worker over an American or to even replace an American worker with an H-1B worker. And this happens all the time, a lot. In fact, the top 10 H-1B employers over the last 3 years are all offshore outsourcing firms that ship jobs overseas. This is Infosys, Tata Consultancy, Putney. I can go on and on. And if you look at their wage levels, this is typically in a occupations computer systems analyst occupation, which is not a high-level complex computer occupation. And there's been countless stories, and I've talked to people who have been replaced up in Rochester, New York, where Xerox outsourced some of its work to HCL, a major offshore outsourcing company, brought in L1 workers to shadow their American software engineers, and the American software engineers had to train their foreign replacements. So I could go on and on. This is not an argument that we should get rid of the H-1B program. This is an argument that what we should do is define it in a way that doesn't disadvantage American workers, that raises the wage floors to a reasonable level, that these are actually very skilled people that gives American workers a first and legitimate shot at these jobs. You have to do this in a careful way. You don't want to choke off the H-1B program. You want to have employers to have some flexibility in how they do their hiring and laying off, but you can't have it set in such a way with such big loopholes where they're doing this en masse, and a lot, actually the majority of the H-1B demand is for cheaper indentured workers these days. I don't see how anyone can argue that that's good either for those American workers or for the American economy at large, especially when we have so many under and unemployed workers, Americans who are out there, and wages have not gone up in the IT sector. And the Brookings Institution is funded by Microsoft and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we should be careful about who's doing these studies, what studies we quote, and so on and so forth.
So I think I would definitely say I don't say that, you know, the US workers have to be, or the H-1B workers have to be replacing the US workers or vice versa. But we are trying to here say is that there is actually a genuine shortage of US-born skilled workers, especially in the STEM sector, and that's the reason that the H-1B program and other worker programs are in place. Now again, there is a question of why H-1B workers are paid less or more as compared to US workers. That's another story, and probably there is enough data to go either ways. Definitely there may be issues with the H-1B program, and of course we agree that the question is not whether the H-1B program should be replaced, but the question is whether it can be better implemented. As regard wage levels, actually again there is research to show that the H-1B wage levels are actually not lower compared to US workers if you compare them to equally skilled or workers same age group. So I guess we're all on the same page here, and nobody is wanting one set of workers to replace the other, but the question is that they can coexist. One does not have to be at the cost of the other.
Go ahead, Ron, and then we'll go to Andrew and Pete.
Okay, so the claim that there's a shortage, of course, is very debatable. If you look at the unemployment rates, if you look at the most basic measure of whether there's a shortage, supply and demand would be wages would be going up. They haven't gone up in these fields. There isn't a shortage. They have not gone up. They have,
from 1990 to 2010, H-1B driven
1990s. So if you pick the baseline of 1990,
no,
we're talking
the reason I picked 1990, that's the start of the H-1B program. So H-1B driven increases in STEM workers were associated with significant increase in wages for college educated US-born workers in 219 US cities.
All right, well let's let Ron finish.
So look, there's a lot of ways to cherry pick what date you want to start at. The most basic thing is to look at how the program operates. You don't have to show that there's any shortage. So if you have an employer who wants to hire an H-1B, they can go out and hire an H-1B. They don't have to look for an American worker. They can replace an American worker. And as I stated before, they can legally pay below market wages. And employers have told the GAO this. And you can look at the data. Cognizant hired 18,000 H-1Bs over the last 3 years. Do you think that they hired 18,000 H-1Bs? That's a lot of people. That's double Facebook's overall employment. Without hiring an American or hardly hiring any Americans because there's a shortage, it has nothing to do with a shortage. It's because they can pay below market wages to those H-1B workers. Plus, they control those workers, right? Because they control the visa. So this is pretty basic common sense stuff. And there are ways to fix this. And so the question is whether we want to fix it or not to ensure that it's fair not only to American workers, but also fair to those foreign workers who are coming in so that they get paid fair wages and that they get treated fairly too.
Thank you, Ron.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Susa. I want to let Andrew and Pete chime in a bit here. Andrew, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, my work focuses a lot more on low-wage immigrants, of which there is no real low-skill guest worker program other than the H-2A and the H-2B, which are tiny. So, I mean, I think, you know, and in agriculture, again, which I know more, I think that, you know, there is a much stronger argument you could say these are jobs that, the vast majority of Americans do not want to do, and the argument for bringing in guest workers or guest workers who can become immigrants, which was, I think, part of the part of the Senate bill and part of the Ag Jobs bill, which is people can come in as guest workers and become regularized afterwards, become residents and citizens, has a lot more merit. I think these are low wage jobs, and also not just the wages. The conditions are really bad. So I think in this case you're also looking at sort of the conditions here that a lot of Americans would not want to do. So I think a lot of the other panelists have a lot more expertise than I do on the H-1B program. But just to sort of provide a little more background or context on the low skill, low wage immigrant piece, I think within agriculture, from what I've seen in my research, there's a pretty strong argument that there are also drawbacks, but that there's a strong argument that this is a sector that really needs immigrants or guest workers to keep it viable.
Thank you, Andrew. Pete, do you have any thoughts here on this matter?
Not really. I mean, I think the context of the argument, it was really, it seems to be about data. I agree that a viable way of measuring the demand for folks that would qualify for H-1B would be wages, and trying to get viable data as to whether wages are rising and falling, I think, really would be the determining factor there.
All right. We are going to move on to the next two questions. We have 2 more questions, and our timing is just right. The next question is from Group 1. It's actually from Brent. Brent is asking on behalf of Group 1, what is the correlation between an increase in visas and tax revenue? Similarly, how much money in social services do people on visas cost? I'll repeat the question. What is the correlation between an increase in visas and tax revenue? Similarly, how much money in social services do people on visas cost? Who would like to take this question first? Sweta, Ron?
I'm actually thinking if I can substantiate my response by better data. Just a minute.
No problem. We definitely welcome that.
I'd just say that I think much of that conversation tends to be on the lower skilled, undocumented. Doing the cost benefit, to what extent are the costs socialized and the benefits concentrated towards both the employer as well as the immigrant or the undocumented worker. Even at the high skill level, I've never seen any real study to look at the cost and benefit as the economy at large versus the individual folks. So I think these are complicated things to look at overall, and I don't know, at least in my expertise on the high skill side, I don't know of any study that has tried to do that kind of cost benefit analysis.
Now, while we're waiting for Sweta, Andrew, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, on visa holders, I don't, I'm not on the fiscal. If the question is the fiscal impact of visa holders,
right.
I don't really, I'm not aware of data on that. But I think, on immigration, the Congressional Budget Office, relative to the Senate bill last year, did a study, and I think it's pretty clear, at least at the federal level, showing that that bill and immigrants are actually a benefit, perhaps a slight benefit fiscally to the country overall at the federal level. But then the trade-off is when you get lots of concentrations of immigrants in certain cities, the costs are higher at the local and state level because that's where more of the services are used, education, health, and whatnot. So in places like Los Angeles and Miami and New York and these huge immigrant cities, you do have a lot of larger local and state fiscal costs, but when you take sort of the aggregate, my reading of the research, at least in the Congressional Budget Office report, the aggregate of immigration nationally is actually a benefit to the fiscally to the country overall at a national level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sweta, do you have your evidence?
Yes, so, I'm kind of just, again, the question of data will actually be, it's hard to kind of pull out numbers at a short notice. And again, as we all say, it really depends on which agency is funding the research. And, there will be two sides to every coin. So, but if you do generally, I was, look at the statistics and the data, it seems apparently, now I'm getting this from the the American Immigration Council AIC webpage, so now you can always argue that that's going to be pro-immigration, but apparently undocumented immigrants pay an estimated $9.4 billion in state property and sales taxes. But without, that's a number from the website, but I would definitely like to address a myth that people think that, whether it's I don't really work. I work mainly with business immigration. I work mainly with skilled workers. So most of my involvement people are those who have entered, who have lawful status in the country. And even as a personal immigrant who sort of had to wait about 14, 15 years in the line to get a green card, I can say from experience, from fact, from observation, that immigrants, they've been contributing to the taxes, they've been contributing to the Social Security, and if you even look at guest worker programs like H-1Bs, are paying without pulling them, without actually getting any benefit from them. So if you go on to argue that most of these H-1B workers never go on to get sponsored for permanent residence, then they are actually contributing to the tax coffers without making these withdrawals later by way of Social Security or Medicaid. The second point that I would like to make it is even undocumented immigrants, of course, they report income. They're actually more compliant than many people with lawful status because they really want to do everything that they can to be in this country. So just some status, some data that I have from here, it says that actually 1/3 of unauthorized immigrants working in the formal economy pay more than $1 billion in payroll taxes. So there is enough data, whether it's to what extent do we choose to rely upon it at such short notice is questionable, but yes, there is enough data that there is a valid contribution to the taxes.
Thank you. Pete, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I just want to work off of Andrew's point before, because this is also a state-by-state issue depending on the tax structure of the individual states, right? So in states like California that are fairly heavily dependent at one end of the scale on the income tax, but also on sales taxes, they're going to be impacted differently by immigration policy. So for those that are lower skilled, that may be undocumented, they're still in many cases going to have to pay sales tax. And so for states that don't have a high sales tax, there's not going to be, there's generally going to be more a taking of services than a paying into the system. Now, as you move up the economic scale and we start talking about H-1Bs and some folks that may be more connected to the sales tax or to the income tax, then states that don't have an income tax versus those who do. Obviously, in California, we actually have both of those things. They will be affected differently by immigration policy. So understanding that the question of revenues and expenses really does vary state to state depending on whether those states are more dependent on sales tax or income tax.
Thank you. Any last comments on this particular question? All right, we are moving on to the last question for this first session. The last question is from Peter. The briefing materials say that undocumented immigrants cost $14,000 per individual. How would this number change if all undocumented immigrants could work?
I would just jump back in again on this because the research that's been done as it relates to tax policy shows that in states that have low sales tax, like a Montana, the naturalization of citizens would not have a huge impact. In California, there would certainly be some impacts to revenues if we were beginning to see a greater impact or a naturalization of citizens to put them onto the tax rolls as it relates to income tax and or property tax.
All right, thank you, Pete. Any comments? Further thoughts on the cost of undocumented immigrants? Whether changing, how would this number change if all undocumented immigrants could actually work? Yes, Ron.
So I wouldn't talk so much about the cost, but I think the importance of having a legal structure so that people who are working have rights and responsibilities is really important. Having a black market in the labor market is bad, really, for those workers, and bad for the American system. So I think trying to regularize them in some way is important. How we go about doing that, is up for debate. To use guest workers, to use permanent immigration, and to what extent are there trial periods and those kinds of things. That gets complicated, and it really does vary by industry sector and whatnot. But I think the overall important thing is that we get people out of the shadows. I mean, it's just crazy that we have this large a share of folks who are living in fear. I think it's just, to be frank, un-American in a lot of ways.
Any comments on that? Andrew Sweta?
We definitely agree. I mean, 11 million people living in shadows, it's not viable. Something has to be done to get them to the path of citizenship or legalization as soon as possible.
I would just jump in here and add, too, that the impact, again, depending on the level of government we're talking about, what we've seen in California, I think it's important to qualify what living in the shadows means. In many municipalities, their local revenues are based on part sales tax, but also in part property tax revenues. Property taxes are computed on parcels, and parcels are computed on how many. And we have situations here in California where they may be zoned for single-family homes, and they may be zoned to be understood that there are 4 people living in that or 6 people living in that. That relates to how many people you can expect to be offering services to, whether that be education or public safety. And in places where in the shadows you may have places zoned for 4, 6, 8 people where you could have 12, 15 people living in places that certainly weren't built for that. And at the same time, they weren't computed to be offering public services at that level. And so being very deliberate about bringing people out of the shadows so we can really have I think at a local level, and I work with enough municipalities to see this, that they have a good understanding of how many people they're being asked to service. That might then affect what their local tax policy is going to be.
Thank you, Pete. That's very helpful. All right. Well, if there are no further comments on any of the questions, I am going to bring this plenary session to a close. We're so grateful to all 4 panelists for taking time out on their Saturday to do this. It has been extremely informative. And to all the participants that are watching this live, it's now your break time for about an hour, and please join back your small group at 12:45 Pacific. So thank you again, and thank you for the panelists. It's been a really great pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.